As you might be able to read from the newspapers or websites, house is the most expensive commodity in China, the price of which has been rocketing in the past decade. And the government took many countermeasures, including raising the benchmark interest rate for mortgage and constructing a great number of low-rent houses, but they had not been working effectively. Therefore, I suppose the houses will become even more expensive. Owing to the unreasonably high custom duties and enterprises taxes, cars are also very costly, usually around 20% more expensive than the price in other countries. But of course, not everything is expensive around here. The manpower, for example, is quite cheap because of the huge population.
Okay, here is a question about buying things. What kind of things are expensive in your country? Let's have a listen to the response.
As you might be able to read from the newspapers or websites, house is the most.
Okay, you don't read things from a newspaper. You can read things in a newspaper. You can read things from a website. So newspapers take a different preposition from websites. You read things on a website. You read things in a newspaper. Read things from a website. Yeah, I guess you can read things from a website. Yeah, that's okay too. But usually we would say for websites, it might be better to say on a website. Newspapers in. You can't have these two things together. And also, why is there no and here? And this should be houses, because it's not just one house. So it should be something like, why don't we make it easier and say, as you might be able to read from the media, houses are the most expensive.
Most expensive commodity in China.
Now, I'm not sure that houses are actually a commodity. Commodities are things that come from nature, things that naturally occur. Houses don't naturally occur.
The price of which has been rocketing in the past decade. And the government took many countermeasures, including raising the benchmark interest rate for mortgage and constructing a great number.
Okay, a couple of things. Okay, first, mortgages are countable. So this should be mortgages. Another thing. Okay, so this person is trying to use some really high-level vocabulary, like benchmark interest rate. But the benchmark interest rate doesn't determine the mortgage interest rate. The benchmark interest rate is the rate at which the central bank lends money to commercial banks. There's no such thing as a benchmark interest rate for mortgages.
Of low rent.
Okay, so I guess so instead we should say the government took many countermeasures, including, you can just say raising the benchmark interest rate, but there should be no for mortgage. If you do want to talk about mortgages, just remember mortgages are countable.
The benchmark interest rate for mortgage and constructing a great number of low-rent houses, but they had not been working effectively.
Now here he uses the past perfect tense. I'm not sure why. The past perfect tense had not been. This should be used when there are two things that happened in the past and the one happened before the other thing. In this sentence, it's not clear to me what happened before or after the other one.
Working effectively. Therefore, I suppose the houses will become even more expensive.
Okay, so no article here because we're talking about houses in general. But just keep in mind, not everybody lives in a house. So why not use the word housing instead? Because housing would include houses, apartments, and all other kind of accommodation that people live in. So why not say, therefore, I suppose therefore, I suppose housing will become even more expensive.
Owing to the unreasonably high custom duties and enterprises taxes.
What is enterprises taxes? Is he talking about corporate tax? If you're talking about the taxes that companies pay, that's corporate tax, not enterprises tax.
Cars are also very costly, usually around 20% more expensive than the price in other countries.
Now, it's cars, plural. So then it should be prices, plural.
Around 20% more expensive than the price in other countries. But of course, not everything is expensive around here. The manpower, for example, is quite cheap because of the huge population.
Okay. Manpower is one of those nouns that is not, it's not concrete, it's more of a concept, it's not tangible, it's not something you can touch. So we don't need the article the there. So manpower, for example, is quite cheap. So what should I say about this? It's a good attempt. I mean, he really went for some high level vocabulary here. I mean, we talked about the interest rates. Unfortunately, he got the definitions a little bit wrong. But I mean, still, a good attempt.